Hi. Welcome to what is the final official live office hours of 2024. What? Yeah, I know. The final official live office hours of 2024. That's a lot. All right. I am Dr. Shannon Coates. Please feel free to call me Shannon. My pronouns are she, her, or they, them. As my friend Liz Jackson Hearn says, either is cool and both are groovy. Wait, does she say that? I think she says that. And I am coming to you live from a little town north of Toronto in Ontario, Canada. All right, friends, so here we are. Hey, what do I do? Well, I'm over here creating resources for voice teachers to take advantage of, mostly to maximize their pedagogy. Yeah, it's true. Why? Because the vast majority of us voice teachers and music teachers in general, in North America especially, we're just out here teaching. We're just out here doing our thing. This is the same with academic teachers, by the way. You know that academic teachers don't have to go to like teachers college, right? Like, you know, they don't have to actually learn how to teach, right? In North America anyway, you just apply. And when we're talking about, I'm about to go on a little tangent here. This is not part of what I was going to talk about, but here we go. When you apply to be a teacher at a university, you having any kind of teaching training is like a bonus, right? When you apply to a music faculty, they're looking for you having had a career as a performer on your instrument. They're looking for you to possibly demonstrate teaching, but who is assessing whether or not your teaching is effective? Other people who have never had any training in effective teaching. So like the whole panel who's assessing whether or not you are an effective teacher is made up of people who have never had any training themselves. But let me also just say this. Wow, a little ranty today. You're welcome. It's Friday. It's my last one of the year. So when I was hired to do some courses at a university, now they offered courses for teachers who were new to the university that was based around like classroom management, attendance policies, developing a syllabus, learning outcomes, assessment protocols, etc. So it was based around how to work in a classroom. And so that's fine, but most of us here, we're not working in classrooms. So even when you do get the education, even that is not geared toward one-on-one pedagogy and what we do in the studio and how to teach one-on-one, right? So all that to say, hey, I develop resources for voice teachers, especially if you're working one-on-one, but develop resources for voice teachers in particular to be able to get some continuing education around pedagogy, how to teach, especially how to teach one-on-one, what that looks like, how we understand the concept of being an educator, how we understand learning, all of those things, because there's very little training out there for one-on-one voice teachers. And also, it's not required, right? Like, anyone can be like, hey, I'm a music teacher now, I'm going to teach you how to play piano, I'm going to teach you how to sing. Anybody can, which everyone has to start somewhere. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you should not, without any certification. I'm not saying that at all, because we know that certification does not equal competence, right? Certification has nothing to do with competence. All of the certification we have available to us doesn't necessarily denote competence. All of our pedagogy degrees, all of the things, doesn't necessarily denote competence. It may give you some ideas of things that you know, but it doesn't necessarily denote that you are a competent or effective voice teacher, right? Especially not when we're talking about one-on-one voice teaching. So the reason I'm talking about it is because, like I said, I offer those resources to support voice teachers to find continuing education so they can maximize their pedagogy, become the teachers they want to be. There's also a fair amount of, and this is starting to get us into the topic today, but when I'm working with voice teachers, there's also a fair amount of internal reflection, as well as deconstruction, if you will, of some of the legacies of the systems that we have been a part of, and understanding the ways that those things show up in our pedagogy are perhaps not in alignment with the things we understand about learning and about teaching, and also with our actual values and the ways we want to show up in the studio. And so that segues me into this concept of right and wrong in the voice studio and in teaching in general, but we're going to make it pretty specific to the voice studio and about teaching one-on-one in particular. This concept of there being a right and wrong, but also even more insidiously, this desire we have as educators, as teachers, to support singers by giving them praise for doing it right. So from the best of intentions, we have this desire to support the singers we're working with, to let them know that they are doing it right. We want to praise them for the things that they're doing right. Obviously we do, right? We want to make sure that they know that they're learning. Let's talk about what that does in the voice studio from 3 different perspectives. So the first is from a perspective of how we support agency in learning with the singers we're working with. So if we are praising, saying, oh, good job. Oh, yes, that was right. Oh, that's the one. Ooh, do that again. That's so good. I love that. All of which you will hear coming out of my mouth on a regular basis and in a studio situation. Don't get me wrong. However, that is our default. If we are doing it without consideration, without intention, without understanding, here's what that communicates. First of all, it communicates to the singers we're working with that as the voice teacher or the expert in the room can tell you when something is right or wrong, when it is good or bad, when you are doing it correctly. And what that encourages in terms of our students is a kind of dependency on us as the arbiter of their singing, right? So that's the one thing that starts to happen is singers we're working with, often they come into the studio with this already, and then they're supported to continue to think that the voice teacher, the reason they're the expert is because they know when I'm doing it right or wrong. They know when I am doing the right coordinations, creating the right sounds, and they can tell me. And this is insidious, right? Very few of us are intentionally going into our teaching, into our studios and saying, well, it's my job to tell them whether they're right or wrong, and whether their voices are working the way they're supposed to, and to make sure that they can never decide for themselves whether their sound is what they want. My intention is to make sure that for the rest of their lives, they will always be dependent on me to tell them whether the sound is right or wrong, or whether they're doing it right or wrong. Very few of us are going into the studio explicitly and intentionally trying to do that. Many of us do that internally, explicitly, intentionally, because we haven't examined what it means to go into the studio and continually give praise and continually tell singers that when it's good and when it's bad. So many of us are doing this unintentionally. It's true, we are. From the best of intentions. We're like, but they got it right. I want them to know that they got it right. Yes, yes. And at the beginning of a singer's learning journey, that may be the way that we should work with singers, because lots of singers don't have an understanding of what they want when they're coming into the voice studio, and also lots of learners come into a learning situation or an educational situation expecting to be sort of baby bird fed all of the things that they need in order to be successful, right? So often, yes, that's the beginning of the journey, but none of us, hopefully, we don't want to stay there in that spot. So the second thing that this does when we are telling singers that it was right, it was good, is that it communicates to singers that there is right and a wrong, that there is a good and a bad, that there is some kind of moral underpinning to sounds. So it communicates to singers that it is possible to do something right or wrong with their own bodies, right? Impose a morality on the sounds and on the ways that singers use their bodies to create sounds. So singers hear, that was good, oh no, do that again, try this, that was good, that was right, that was wrong, and they ingest that it is possible for me to make a good sound and a bad sound, a right sound and a wrong sound. There is a moral binary, if you will, to sounds and to the way we create sounds. That's the second thing that communicates. The third thing that can communicate to singers is that I got it right this time, and not only did I get it right, but it was 100% correct. I got it 100% correct that time. Not only did I get it 100% correct that time, now I know it, and so I must get it 100% correct every other time, or else I failed. So this is part of the legacy of that learning system, where we are assessing the outcome and we are putting some kind of external outcome on the learning, and you will show me that you have acquired the learning by doing this thing. So think about classroom situations. How do we typically assess whether or not students have learned something or acquired the information? How do we assess that? We give them a test of some description. It could be a kind of written test, right? There could be multiple choice, there could be true or false, there could be essays, there could be problem solving, etc., etc. Any kind of written test. We might give them a presentation to do, and also there's a grading rubric along with that. There are so many ways that we assess, typically, that we assess knowledge acquisition. 99% of the time, the knowledge acquisition assessment process comes with a grading scheme, and the grading scheme is developed by the assessor based on the things that I think are important and based on the ways that I think you should show me that you have acquired the knowledge. 99% of the time, it does not show whether or not you have acquired the knowledge. It just shows whether or not you can play the game to take the test. It shows whether or not you are good at checking off all of the boxes in order to be assessed well. 99% of the time. We have research on this, there's data on this, I'm not just pulling this out of the air. We know this about assessment processes. When we have a grading scheme attached to an assessment process, especially when a grading scheme or that assessment process is developed by an external expert, what we are generally assessing how well you fit into the system in order to take the test, in order to check all the boxes. And what does that system then communicate to students? It communicates that I can get 100%. It also communicates back that there is a right or a wrong, right? So we were talking about that a minute ago. It communicates that there is a right or a wrong way to learn, and that my acquisition of understanding can be assessed in terms of right or wrong. It also communicates that 100% is the best way. What happens if you only get 70% on a test? For me, getting 70 or 75% or even 80% on an assessment felt like I had failed somehow. Logically, we understand that you actually passed. 75% ain't nothing, and neither is 80%, right? So what does it communicate to our students who have been through this Western educational system and who understand assessment of acquisition of learning through the lens of I should be able to get 100%. In order to know that I've acquired this learning, I have to get 100%. And not only do I have to get 100%, but I have to get 100% of the time, or else my overall grade won't be 100%. If I only get 100% one time and I get 50% the next time, my overall grade is 75%. That means I didn't learn it. I didn't learn it 100%. So you see how insidious that communication then becomes, especially, like I said, when we're working with students who understand the language of right and wrong through the lens of a classroom educational assessment. Students who have been through our Western educational systems and who, when they hear it was right, they translate that into I got it 100%. And now, in order for me to continue to show that I've acquired this knowledge, this learning, I must get it right in perpetuity for the rest of time. It must be 100% for the rest of time. 3 things we're communicating when we use the language of right and wrong. I should say too, it's not just when we use the language of right and wrong, right? Because lots of us are not saying, oh, that's right, or oh, that's wrong in the studio. But we are saying, good, do it again. Oh, not as good, try this. Why don't you change this? There's something else you should do. Fix this. That language absolutely communicates wrong. And good, do it again just like that. Good, try that again. And make sure you do it the same way, communicates right. Whether we actually use right and wrong, those actual words in our studio, we are constantly communicating right and wrong in the studio, even if we're not using that language. So 3 things that right and wrong conceptually communicates. 1, it communicates that I am the arbiter of right and wrong. Me, the expert, I am the arbiter. And I can tell you whether or not you've done it right or wrong. And also, that's my job. I'm here to tell you whether it's right or wrong. Yeah. It then communicates that there is a moral component to singing and sounds and creating sounds. It is possible to get them right and wrong. That sounds are either right or wrong, and that there's a moral component to it. The 3rd thing we communicate is that it is possible to get 100%. Not only is it possible, but that it is preferable and that you are a good student, a good learner, if you get it not just right, but you get it 100% right 100% of the time. And that if you do not get it 100% right 100% of the time, you have failed. You're not a good student. You're not a good learner. So how do we then support the singers we're working with so that we do not communicate that I know what is right and wrong in your singing, and I am the final arbiter of how you sing and what you do. B, that it sounds are on a binary, either good or bad, and it is possible to put sounds on a good or bad binary moral scale. And C, without communicating that not only is it possible to get 100% to sing to that level of correctness, but it's preferable, and if you don't, you are not a good student. How do we change in our communication? One of the great changes in language is exploration and I wonder questions. In the voice ped degree and in the work that I do, I call this an exploration over explanation. Exploration over explanation. And so when singers are working on something, that they're creating a sound or finding a coordination, rather than saying that was right because, or that didn't work because, or what you're doing here is XYZ and you should be doing XYZ, we explore instead. You may understand all of the mechanics and all of the physiology and all of the science behind why something wasn't successful or why it didn't work, but that is not useful in the studio. What is useful is exploration. So we're going to explore over explain. And what that looks like is, what would happen if? How would you experience XYZ? What if, blah, blah, blah. Tell me more about XYZ. Exploration, asking questions. What about singers who are not yet able to articulate what they want in their voice, or they do not have perception of what's happening in their bodies as they're singing? What about those singers? Great. Those are the singers who use something called expansive praise. So this is a concept that I use in voice ped consults, in the voice ped degree. We work on how to do this in the voice ped degree. Expansive praise. So when we have singers who cannot yet articulate or perceive what is happening in their bodies, or who cannot yet ask for what they want, or who don't know what they want yet, when we're working with those singers, they're at the beginning of their learning journey in lots of ways. And again, this doesn't mean that they are children. This could be any chronological age, right? They're at the beginning of their learning journey when it comes to their own bodies and their own voices. We can give expansive praise. So rather than saying, oh, that was good, I liked that, this was, etc., etc. Get specific. The inhalation was more released. The sound was more balanced. There was more release in XYZ. And see how I'm not saying it was released? I'm saying there was more release. There was more of. This was more successful. And I'm being very specific about what was more successful. So the way that I am using the language there communicates that there is no stopping point. You haven't achieved 100%. You're at 75, 60, 80, communicating that you are progressing in your learning. What does that communicate to the singer? The singer then starts to internalize, oh yeah, I am not looking for 100%. I'm not trying to be 100%. What I'm looking for is progression in the skill, progression in the knowledge acquisition. The other thing this does for singers when we're really specific in terms of expansive praise is rather than us saying, oh, that was good, and then them thinking, my breathing was 100%, when in fact we were referring to release of the tongue. I don't know. We were referring to like the vowel shaping. We were referring to the knees being released. And they're thinking, oh yeah, my inhalation was perfect. As soon as I am giving you praise that is not specific, or you, the student, are going to latch on to whatever the thing was in your experience, which is great, except that then we're communicating. So I want to draw your attention as the voice teacher, as the expert, especially at the beginning of the learning journey. I want to draw your attention as the student to the things that you are acquiring the knowledge of, that you are learning, that you are on the learning journey for acquiring. That was awkward. You're welcome. So that's what I want to draw your attention to, the things that you're on the learning journey toward. And so what? Expansive, specific praise, if I need to give it. And at the beginning of the learning journey, we often do need to give that expansive, specific praise because singers, again, often do not have experience being able to assess themselves and understand for themselves what was more successful, what they wanted, what it felt like. So that's where we are at the beginning of the learning journey. We are there giving them expansive, specific praise. Once they are able to, that's when we can get into some more exploration over explanation. And then we also want to start to get into this language of what was successful for you? Which part was the most successful for you? Do you see how I'm not saying which part was right? Which part was good? I'm saying which part was the most successful for you? Which part, or which coordination, which blah, blah, blah was the closest to what you wanted? Not the closest to what I wanted, closest to what you wanted. Then not only am I removing the actual words, good and bad or right and wrong, out of my vocabulary in the teaching, I'm also then removing myself as the assessor from the situation, because I'm building now into my language and into my process of drawing attention. I'm building in this understanding that you get to decide what worked well, what was not as successful for you, what wasn't close to what you wanted, and what was close to what you wanted. You get to decide. And then we're going to start to build from the things that you tell me. So rather than me saying, that was good, do that again, I would love to hear it 3 times and you tell me which one was the most successful or the closest to what you wanted. So now, rather than them singing it 3 times and then me saying the second one was the best one, and them going, okay, I guess I have to figure out how to do that second one again the right way. I wonder what I did. They go into the singing already understanding that they get to decide, that they have agency, that they get to figure it out for themselves. And then they're singing looking for what's great, right? They're singing expecting to hear something, not something perfect. They're not expecting to hear 100%. Notice my language. I'm not saying, tell me which one was right. I'm saying, tell me which one was the closest to what you wanted. Tell me which one felt the most successful for you. If they've already said that I really like it when it feels like I am putting laser beams through the middle of my forehead, sing it 3 times and tell me which one had the most laser beams through the forehead sensation. When I work this way with voice teachers, and I'm cueing them to ask these questions and to take a step back in terms of that external assessor role, I start to support that agency and ask those kinds of questions. Teachers get really uncomfortable. We get really, yeah, but what if when I ask them to sing it 3 times and I tell them that they can tell me which one is the most successful according to them, what if they choose the one that's the least successful? So what? So what if they do? That is your interpretation of what is successful and what is not successful. We are working with singers who have agency over their own bodies, are we not? We're working to support singers to find agency over their bodies. So maybe they say the thing that I thought was like, ooh, really not successful, and we really need to fix that. What do we say after they choose that one? We say, right, how did you know it was successful? What were the things that happened in your body? How can you describe the sound? Tell me how you knew it was successful. You are going to hear some very interesting things about how they knew it was successful. And then you can build on those. And let me tell you something, 9 times out of 10, they're going to choose the thing that you also thought was successful. 9 times out of 10. When you let go, you start to trust and you start to give them agency. 9 times out of 10, those singers are going to choose the thing that you would also have chosen in terms of being the most successful. This happens all the time. So often, voice teachers will come into lessons with a kind of lesson plan and all the things they want to work on in specific songs or the things that need to be fixed in specific songs, etc. Often they come in with those ideas in the back of their minds. Great, not a problem. And then when I say to them, before this singer sings XYZ song, let's ask them to put up their hand when it feels like they are closest to creating the sounds they want to create. And then we're going to ask them to notice as they're singing which parts they want to be closer to the things they loved. Notice I'm not asking what part didn't work, what part do they want to fix, what part wasn't good. I'm asking which parts of the song do you wish were working as well as the parts that you noticed were working really well or were closest to what you wanted. So now, what are they looking for? They're looking for like, what part of this song is like closest to what I want? I'm not looking for what is 100% correct. I'm not looking for what is good or what is right. I'm looking for what's the closest. Working in percentages rather than in absolutes, yeah? Ooh, that was good. We want to work in percentages, not absolutes. Oh, I like that. I'm gonna make a reel out of that, I think. Sorry, so then they are looking for the thing that is closest. They're looking for the percentage, not the absolute. The thing that is the highest percentage, not the thing that is 100%. And they are also then not looking for things that are wrong. They're not listening for the things that they want to fix. They're listening for, eventually, At first they will be listening for the things they want to fix because that's the way we've talked to them, right? That's the way that everything is in their understanding. That's the lens they're looking through. So eventually they will start to look for the things that are at only 25% and that I would like to get to at least 50% today. So now they're not looking for absolutes on both sides of the equation. So they're not looking for the things I failed at, and they're not looking for the things that I got 100% right. They're looking for all of the things that are closest to what I want, and then the things that I want to move forward, the things I want to get better at, the things I want to be more like these things. See how that changes the lens, that changes the way we learn, that takes the absolutes out, it takes the morals out. It takes the morals out of self-assessment and out of listening to ourselves. It also gives the singers we're working with the tools to be able to do this at home. What happens when a singer gets it right in the studio and we say, oh, that was so good, do it again, and they can't do it again? Or they can do it again maybe 3 times and then they go home and they can't do it again when they're on their own. Super frustrating, right? Super frustrating. For all involved. Me as the singing teacher, I started thinking, wow, I'm really bad at this. I just need to recapture the magic words that I said in order for them to be able to do it right again. I have to come up with another way to fix this. I've got to figure out another exercise, I guess, because that exercise I was using isn't working anymore. Or we're like, God, this student is so bad at listening. Why can't they just get it together? It's so frustrating. We always have to go through this. And we often are in the lessons, and I'm speaking from experience here, we're often in the lessons like nervous when they get it right because you're like, oh, they're never going to be able to get this again. And I have no tools to be able to get them there again. I got to figure out some kind of exercise or some other way to tell them how to do it. What goes through the singer's mind when they can't get it right again? It's very frustrating. I am a terrible student. Why can't I just get it right again? The teacher needs to give me better exercises so that I can get it right again. We need to go back and figure out what I did right so that I can do it again. That's an absolute mindset. I can do it right or I can do it wrong. There's no in between. That's absolute, right? That is also moral mindset. So when we are working in the right or wrongs, when we're working on the two sides, it's incredibly frustrating. Because that's not how learning works. Learning is not about you either have it right or you have it wrong. Learning, especially when we're talking about a motor skill, acquiring specific kinds of coordinations, the idea or the lens that tells us that it is possible to get it right or wrong, and once we have it right, then I should be getting it right forever, amen, just leads to really frustrating experiences in the studio for all of us. It's not helping anyone to learn. It's not helping us to teach. It becomes incredibly frustrating. It also sends us on these massive deep dives, or the quests, if you will, onto the teachers' social media groups to ask questions about, like, how do you fix this thing? What are the exercises you use? I've tried all of my exercises and none of them are working anymore. I've tried all the tools and they don't work on this one singer. What's the directive you use to get someone to do XYZ thing? Or we end up in all of the voice pedagogy textbooks, trying to figure out what's the right exercise so that we can repeat that 100% correct thing that happened. Incredibly frustrating and counterproductive. Really inefficient learning. Okay, singers who are at the beginning of their learning journey, we're going to be intentional about giving specific, expansive praise, which sounds like, oh, that was a better / more relaxed / more released / XYZ, freer, blah, blah, blah thing. Expansive, specific praise, which sounds like an oxymoron, but I think you know what I mean. Expansive, meaning we're not just saying, yep, that was good, do it again. For folks who are a little bit further along on their learning journey, we're going to ask questions like, how would you experience? What happens if? I'd love to explore. Can we explore? Etc. For folks who are a little bit further along on their learning journey, we're going to start to ask, tell me, felt like was the most successful. Tell me, let me just say this, you can do this. For folks who are at the very beginning of their learning journey, they just may not have the answers yet, but you are allowed to drop these in, to start seeding these questions from the very first lesson. You're allowed to say things like, what felt like the closest to what you want? And when they say, I don't know, great. How about we explore X, Y, Z? Yeah. But for folks who are a little bit further along, what was the closest to what you want? And what parts would you like to bring closer to what you want? How do you know it was what you wanted? What did it feel like? Great. It felt like you knew it was what you wanted because it felt like you were placing the voice onto a shelf, just like you would put a book onto a shelf. Amazing. Let's do that 6 more times. And all we're doing right now is concentrating on putting that book on the shelf. Let's use this hand motion. Let's do it together. We'll put the book on the shelf. And you tell me which one was the best putting the book on the shelf. Which one was the most pristine putting the book on the shelf that you can imagine. Have fun with that. I think that's a good message to end 2024 with. Let's release the either ors. All right. Take good care. I'll see you in 2025. What?